Sunday mornings were always supposed to be simple. That was our deal. No alarms, no work emails. Just the two of us on the porch with mismatched mugs and the smell of bacon that always came out slightly burnt because I couldn't time the stove and the toaster at the same time. The sky was already bright, and the sun was creeping over the roof lines of our neighborhood. The cactus-lined yard gave off a soft golden hue. There was a kind of peace in the air, the kind that made you think things might still be okay even when they weren't. I brought out 2 plates, eggs, toast, avocado slices, and a splash of sriracha like always. Her mug had the little crack near the handle. She never replaced it, said it gave it personality. Mine was plain navy. No story behind it. She came out a few minutes later, wearing my old ASU hoodie, oversized, sleeves covering her hands. The sleeves she used to steal to warm her fingers before she'd nuzzle under my arm. Now, it just looked like another layer between us. "Thanks," she said, giving me a tight-lipped smile. The kind you'd give a coworker who brought you coffee but spelled your name wrong. I watched her sit down, cross her legs, and tuck one barefoot under the other. Her phone was already in hand, thumb scrolling. A smile flickered across her face. Not for me, just whatever she was reading. Probably a meme, or a message, something that didn't include me. I should have been used to the silence between us. We hadn't really talked in weeks, not about anything that mattered. Surface-level stuff, groceries, schedules, who was going to water the plants. But this morning, something was different. Something had shifted, and it wasn't the temperature. As she leaned forward to take a sip of her coffee, I saw it. Right there, just above the collar of her hoodie, on the left side of her neck, was a faint, pinkish mark. At first, I thought maybe I was imagining it. So I blinked, sipped my coffee, looked again. It was still there, subtle, not bold enough to scream, but not nothing either. It looked fresh, too high up to be a rash or a reaction, not near a necklace clasp. And I knew her skin. I knew the way it bruised. Her hair fell back as she stretched, and the angle caught the light just enough to show it fully. That soft discoloration. A kiss that didn't belong to me. I set my mug down quietly. Didn't say a word. She must have noticed because she looked up and tilted her head, raising an eyebrow like I was being dramatic. "What?" she asked with a slight laugh, light and casual, like I was being silly for staring. My eyes didn't move. I didn't speak. She followed my gaze, realized what I was looking at, then let out a breathy chuckle as she pulled her hoodie's collar up to her chin. "Oh, that? Relax, Chris. We've basically been roommates for years." Roommates. That word hit harder than anything else. She said it with a laugh, as if to cut the tension before it got sharp. Like calling it what it was made it less cruel. Like defining our marriage as an arrangement between 2 people sharing bills and air would somehow make the moment easier. I didn't laugh. I didn't blink. She shifted uncomfortably and added, "It's probably from that massage pillow I got. You know the one? I used it last night. Fell asleep with it pressed right up against my neck." Still, I said nothing. She reached for her fork, but her hand hesitated. Then she reached for her phone instead, like she'd been waiting for it to buzz. And when it didn't, she checked it anyway. That's when I heard it, her ring, the one I bought her 8 years ago, tapping against the side of the plate as her hand moved. Clink. It was barely audible, but it echoed louder than her voice. Louder than the excuse. Louder than that word, roommates. There was more honesty in that single, hollow sound than in anything she'd just said. I didn't ask questions. I didn't accuse her. I didn't want to see her lie again. Instead, I watched her posture. Her fingers tapped the screen, but there was tension in her shoulders, like a kid waiting for a scolding. Not fear, just irritation. Like she was annoyed I had noticed. She used to fill silences. Now she sat comfortably inside them, like she was waiting for me to break first. My eggs were getting cold. I didn't care. Her fork scraped the plate gently as she pushed the avocado around without eating it. "Don't be weird," she said softly, eyes still on her phone. "It's nothing. Nothing." I nodded slowly, not in agreement, just acknowledgement. A silent footnote that I had heard her words and filed them away under unverified. I turned my gaze toward the yard, letting the heat off the concrete blur my vision just enough to stop looking at her. I took a slow sip from my mug, tasting the bitterness, knowing it wasn't the coffee. In that moment, I remembered something stupid. Years ago, when we first moved into the house, she used to write little notes on napkins and leave them beside my breakfast. Stuff like "have a good day," "handsome," or "don't forget I love you." She hadn't done that in years. I used to blame time, work, stress. Now I knew better. It wasn't time. It was distance. The kind that creeps in slowly, until you can't remember where it started. The porch used to be where we made decisions, big ones. Careers, trips, baby names, even though we never had one. Now it was just a neutral zone, like sitting in a shared waiting room. I looked back at her one more time. She was texting now, smiling at the screen again. A real smile, not the one she gave me. And I wondered if the person on the other end had seen the mark too, or if they had made it. I didn't speak for the rest of breakfast. Neither did she. The birds chirped. The wind shifted. A neighbor's dog barked twice. The world moved and we didn't. When the plates were empty, she stood up and stretched. "I'll clean these later," she said, already halfway through the door. I nodded again. Clink. The ring hit the edge of her coffee mug this time as she picked it up. And just like that, she was gone. Back into the house. Back into whatever version of her life she kept behind a passcode I didn't know anymore. I sat there a while longer. Let the sweat bead at my temples. Let the sun warm my hands. I didn't check my phone. I didn't clear the plates. I just stared at the empty chair across from me and wondered when it stopped being ours. After that morning on the porch, everything in the house started humming differently. It was like someone had swapped the air for something heavier. Quiet but charged. Like the sky before a monsoon rolls in. I didn't say anything to her. Not that day. Not the next. But inside my head, the gears were moving in ways I couldn't slow down. I started seeing things differently. Not just that faint mark on her neck, but everything. It was like a reverse highlight reel played behind my eyes. Not memories of love or milestones, but little things, odd things. The things I used to brush off as quirks or habits. Like her air walks. That's what she called them. Late night walks to clear her head. She'd started doing them a few months back, saying the yoga classes weren't cutting it anymore and that the night air helped her think. I never argued. I figured maybe she needed space. We both did. But some nights she'd be gone over an hour. Sometimes more. No flashlight. No ID. Just her leggings, her earbuds, and a bottle of water she never came back with. I used to be worried about her walking that late. I told her once, "It's not exactly safe, Em." She rolled her eyes. "Chris, I'm not wandering into the desert. I walk down the main road and loop back. I'm fine." I let it go, because that's what you do when you trust someone. And now, I hated how easily I had let things go. She said she quit yoga back in May. Some scheduling conflict or something. But she still left with her mat every Wednesday. She even rolled it up tight like it had weight to it. I once asked if she wanted me to drive her, since the sun was brutal that week. She hesitated just for a second, then said she was fine, that it helped to drive alone. That second stuck in my head. And then there were the small tech things. Subtle ones. Her phone used to sit face up on the table. She'd laugh at memes, show me funny tweets, even read messages out loud when they were from friends. Now it lived face down, always on silent, and she'd take it with her into every room, bathroom, laundry room, didn't matter. I walked into the bedroom one afternoon while she was napping. Her phone was in her hand. She stirred when I stepped in, and her thumb immediately flipped the screen over. I said nothing, but that single reflex said everything. She used to leave it charging in the kitchen overnight. Now it was in bed with her, nestled between her pillow and the edge of the blanket. There was a message once. I wasn't snooping, not really. She'd fallen asleep on the couch, and I went to plug her phone in. The screen lit up as I picked it up. Just enough time to see a preview. A name, D. And a message, "Wine glass, still thinking of you." I stood there, holding the phone like it was something fragile, dangerous, like it might burn my hand. She stirred, blinked once, saw me holding it. "You get a text," I said, handing it over casually. She glanced at it. Her face didn't change much, but her tone got tight. "Oh, that's just an old coworker. We used to joke around. It's nothing like that." "Wine emoji?" She smiled too fast. "Inside joke. From a work trip forever ago." I nodded. The kind of nod that means I hear you, not I believe you. The next day, her passcode changed. No explanation. No conversation. Just a new wall between us. It was like she'd forgotten we used to share everything. Passcodes, grocery lists, Spotify playlists. Now, she had her own world inside that screen, and I wasn't part of it. I remembered offering to come with her to one of her seminars last month. She'd been talking about them more, some weekend development series about communication or mindfulness. I thought maybe tagging along would show support. I even suggested we could grab dinner after. She paused mid-bite, looked genuinely startled. "Why?" I blinked. "I don't know. Just thought it could be nice. Something we do together." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Chris, it's mostly lectures. You'd be bored out of your mind." She added something about it being for women only anyway. Something about safe spaces. But that wasn't what she'd said before. Back then, it was co-ed. I remembered because she once mentioned a speaker named Marcus who'd given a great talk. She'd said he was insightful, charismatic. I didn't argue, but I remember. She began mentioning new coworkers, casual names, tossed into conversation like seasoning. "Darren said this. Had lunch with this guy David. Debate with D about office music again. D." There it was again. I didn't have proof. Not yet. But the shape of the lie was beginning to form. And once you see the shape, it's hard to unsee it. We had dinner that night, Thai takeout, something we used to save for Friday movie nights. I tried to keep it light. Tried to talk about a movie I saw a trailer for. She nodded, smiled, responded with the right expressions. But her eyes were somewhere else. And when her phone buzzed twice in a row, she stood to check the laundry. She didn't even pretend to wait. When she came back, her demeanor had shifted, like someone had reset her face. Cheerier. But the kind of cheer that feels premeditated. "I was thinking we should take a trip soon," she said suddenly. "A trip?" "Yeah, somewhere random, like Santa Fe or maybe Sedona. Get away for a weekend." We hadn't talked about traveling in months. Not since the work chaos started. Not since we quietly stopped doing weekend breakfasts together more than once a week. "Sure," I said slowly. "We could look into that." She smiled. Yeah. But something told me she wasn't really planning anything. That the suggestion was less about us and more about controlling the atmosphere. Like tossing a smoke bomb into the room to distract from the fact that something was on fire. I started sleeping lighter, listening for late-night phone calls. Door creaks. I wasn't paranoid, I was processing. There's a difference. Paranoia is irrational. This felt inevitable. She joked less, touched me less, hugged like she owed me one, not like she meant it. The worst part was that I kept playing it cool. Because I didn't want to scare the truth away. There's this horrible phase between trust and confirmation. It's like standing in a dark hallway, knowing there's a door at the end. Maybe open, maybe locked, but you can't reach it yet. So you walk slowly, hands out, trying not to crash into something, trying not to fall. That's where I lived now. One night, while she was in the shower, I checked the Wi-Fi device list. I had set up our router a couple years ago and remembered it tracked connected devices. Laptops, phones, smart speakers. There it was, Darren's iPhone. New. Added 2 weeks ago. Not hers. Not mine. I stared at the name like it was a headline in a language I already understood. I didn't ask her about it, because I was done asking. Instead, I just watched, and waited, and remembered all the little things. How she wore perfume to yoga. How she laughed harder at messages I didn't get to see. How she talked to someone on the balcony late one night and said it was her sister, but her sister lives in Germany and it was 4 a.m. There. Everything that once seemed small now felt like evidence. And the scariest part? I think she wanted me to figure it out. I think she was waiting for me to say it first so she wouldn't have to. It was a Wednesday when everything shifted. The kind of day you forget 5 minutes after it happens. Overcast but dry, the kind of January phoenix gets once in a while when the sun sleeps in. The office was slow. Meetings dragged. Emails sat unopened. Around lunchtime, I found myself just staring at the same spreadsheet for 15 minutes, not taking anything in. The house had been quiet that morning when I left. She was still asleep, curled toward the wall, blanket wrapped tightly like she was anchoring herself to something. I watched her for a second before leaving. Not in a romantic way, not with longing, just a kind of passive study. Like I was waiting to see if she'd stir or acknowledge me. She didn't. At work, something in my chest felt off. Not panic, not dread, just that hum again. The low-frequency tension that had been sitting under my ribs since the morning on the porch. So I went home early, didn't tell anyone, didn't text her. I just walked out of the office at 2:17 p.m., got into my car, and started driving without music. My palms were sweating for no reason. The road stretched out in front of me like it was daring me to keep going. When I pulled into the driveway, the house looked exactly the same as always. Blue recycling bin crooked near the garage. Her car parked neatly in the shade like always. No signs of anything unusual, but my stomach still nodded. I stepped inside quietly, half expecting to catch something in the act, half ashamed for thinking like that. But the house was still. No voices, no sound. Just the buzz of the fridge and the soft creak of the ceiling fan upstairs. No one was home. I stood in the kitchen for a second, unsure of what I was even looking for. And then, out of habit or curiosity or maybe desperation, I opened the doorbell camera app. The one she never used. The one I set up but hadn't checked in months. It stores motion alerts. Little snaps *TS of time. Most were nothing: wind, passing cars, neighborhood cats. But one clip from the day before caught my eye. Time-stamped at 12:03 p.m. I clicked it. There she was, stepping out of a car parked in front of the house. Passenger side. Dressed in jeans and a loose white blouse she used to only wear on weekends. Her hair was tied back the way she always did when she wanted to seem effortlessly pretty. She looked light. Then the driver stepped out. A man, medium height, tanned, navy sport jacket. His hand moved like he was reaching to touch the small of her back but stopped short. They stood close, too close for someone you barely know. Close in that magnetic way people get when there's gravity between them. And then she hugged him. Not a side hug. Not a casual, one-armed, "Hey, thanks for the ride." It was a pull-and-close hug. Hands clasped behind his neck. Her head tilted. His chin rested for a second on her shoulder. I felt something cold pass through me. Not rage. Not heartbreak. Just stillness. And then, right before stepping back, she kissed him. Quick. Almost nothing. But her lips found the corner of his mouth like they'd been there before. She turned away with a soft laugh, brushing her hand through her hair. That part broke me more than the kiss, because that was her "I'm happy" laugh. The real one. The one I hadn't heard in months. She walked to the door, smiled over her shoulder. The man waved once, then drove off. I watched the clip 4 times. I don't know why. Maybe I thought the repetition would change something. That maybe one of the viewings would show me a different angle, a different version of her face. One where she looked hesitant, or regretful. But every frame just confirmed what I already knew. When you live with someone long enough, you learn their body language like it's a second language. You know the fake smiles, the polite laughter, the performative affection. That smile wasn't for me. That kiss wasn't for me. That man, whoever he was already part of her rhythm. I sat down at the kitchen counter and opened the home Wi-Fi network dashboard. I had to do it. I had to know. There it was again, Darren's iPhone, connected to our network. Logged in for the past 3 visits. He'd been here. He had been inside the same walls I slept under, ate under, trusted under. And she'd let it happen. I didn't move, didn't cry, didn't yell. I just sat there, my fingers curled into the wood grain of the counter, thinking. This is it. This was the moment I crossed the line from wondering to knowing. There's no going back after that. No more benefit of the doubt. No more waiting for answers. Because the truth doesn't knock. It doesn't arrive politely. It breaks in through the side door and looks you in the eye. The doorbell clip kept playing in my head like it was a scene from a movie. But I wasn't the lead. I wasn't even supporting cast. I was the guy who leaves a voicemail in the first act and never gets called back. When she got home that night, I didn't say anything. She came in humming to herself, tossing her keys in the bowl by the door, took off her shoes, slipped into slippers, said something about a long meeting. I nodded, said I had a rough day. She gave me that familiar half-smile. I watched her pour a glass of wine. I watched her sit on the couch. I watched her feet tuck under her like always. And I realized I didn't recognize her anymore. Or maybe I did. Maybe this was who she'd been becoming while I was busy clinging to the ghost of who she used to be. The part that broke me wasn't the kiss. It wasn't the lie. It wasn't even Darren's name showing up on the Wi-Fi like a signature left on a crime scene. It was the way she looked at her phone that night. Smiling. Private. Like someone waiting for a message that mattered. I knew it wasn't from me. And I knew I wouldn't ask. Because asking meant she could lie. And I couldn't stomach another lie. The next morning, I woke up before the sun, still dressed in yesterday's clothes. I hadn't slept. Not really. I just laid there, eyes open, listening to her breathing in the other room. Her door was half shut, the hallway light casting a narrow path across the hardwood. Every few minutes I thought about knocking, about asking her straight out. But the truth was already between us, loud and clear, and I didn't need to hear it from her mouth. I brewed coffee and stood in the kitchen, waiting for the silence to thicken. And when it did, I started packing. There was no yelling, no broken plates or scattered drawers. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the sound of cardboard boxes unfolding. I labeled each one carefully. Closet, bathroom, books, desk. I didn't touch anything sentimental. I didn't need to. Her actions had already stripped the emotion from those things. The photo frames were still there on the mantel, smiling versions of us from 5 years ago. I didn't remove them, let her see them, let them haunt her. I packed her shoes one by one, placing tissue paper between the heels like I was doing something sacred. I wasn't angry. Not anymore. Anger requires hope. And I'd run out of that somewhere between the doorbell footage and the wine emoji. Around 9:15, I walked to the panel near the front door and changed the alarm code. Then I reset the Wi-Fi password, turned off her phone's access, changed the garage code. I moved like a man preparing for a storm. Not panicked, just purposeful. She texted around 10:04, heading into the office. Do you want me to pick up dinner tonight? I didn't answer. By noon, everything she owned was boxed and taped. I stacked them neatly by the front entryway. Not dumped, not dramatic, just ready. At 12:30, I sent her a message. You can pick up your things tonight after 7. I won't be here. Everything's labeled. She didn't reply. The read receipt glowed quietly under the message. Then I left. I took nothing but my keys and my wallet. No note, no confrontation, just a clean exit. I drove nowhere in particular. Just down long stretches of desert highway, where the sky feels too big and the silence too personal. I parked outside an old diner on Route 85 and ordered coffee I didn't drink. I just needed somewhere that wasn't our kitchen. Somewhere where the air didn't smell like her shampoo or the ghost of her laugh. I came home around midnight. The porch light was still on. The boxes were untouched. Every single one of them. There was no sign of her car. No voicemail. No follow-up text. Just absence. For a moment, I stood on the sidewalk and stared at the house. Our house, or at least what it had been. And I realized it didn't feel like hers anymore. Not because I'd taken something from her, but because she'd already left it behind long before I moved a single box. I went inside, locked the door behind me, and turned off the porch light. The next morning it rained. Not a storm, just a soft, persistent drizzle. Rare for Phoenix, but fitting. The kind of rain that makes you feel like the world is whispering instead of shouting. And there they were, her boxes still sitting on the porch, some damp around the edges. She hadn't even brought them inside. I stood by the window and watched the water bead on the cardboard, roll down the sides like tears on cheeks that couldn't cry anymore. She hadn't come back. Not last night. Not this morning. She was waiting me out. She thought I'd cave. That I'd come running. That this was just a dramatic gesture, something born of ego or wounded pride. But she didn't understand. I wasn't angry. I wasn't making a point. I was done. I made coffee and drank it slowly, standing barefoot on the cold tile floor. I didn't look at my phone. Didn't check social media. Didn't refresh my messages. Whatever apology or explanation she thought she owed me, I didn't need it. I wasn't looking for closure. Closure was already sitting outside in boxes, soaking through the seams. By noon, the rain had stopped. The sky opened up like it was moving on too. I walked outside, pulled the boxes under the awning, left a folded towel on top of one, just in case she finally came. Then I left a note on the door. No name, no explanation, just 4 words. Rooms booked. For you. That was all. She knew what it meant. The guest room at her sister's. The one with the ugly floral sheets and the hallway light that flickered. The one she never liked. I had made the call, arranged it quietly, paid through the week, because I wasn't going to throw her into the street. But I wasn't going to let her stay either. When I came back from work that night, the boxes were still there. Untouched. Felt like a test. She wanted to see if I'd break. If I'd drag them back inside. If I'd open the door and ask her why she hadn't come for her things. But I didn't. I showered. Made dinner. Ate alone. And when I walked past the front door, I didn't look out the window. Because I didn't need to. This wasn't a game of chicken. This was a funeral without flowers. That night, the house felt strangely calm. The kind of quiet that's not uncomfortable, but earned. I walked into the bedroom, stripped the bed, and replaced the sheets. Not because I expected anyone else to sleep there, but because hers still smelled like lavender and that hint of vanilla lotion she always used. I tossed the pillowcases into the washer and didn't watch them spin. I went to bed alone. And I slept. Really slept. For the first time in weeks, I didn't dream about questions I couldn't ask or answers I didn't want. When I woke up, the sky was pale, and the air was clean. I made breakfast, eggs, toast, and coffee. 2 plates out of habit. Then I put one back. Her side of the table was empty, but the house didn't feel hollow. Felt honest. It had been 4 days since she left the boxes on the porch. Still unopened. Still untouched. Like she was daring me to bring them in. I didn't. I started to forget they were there at all. They became part of the landscape. Like a forgotten package or a broken lawn gnome nobody wanted to throw away. Then, out of nowhere, I got a message. Not from her. Not from Darren. It was from Tom. Her older brother. I hadn't heard from Tom in maybe a year. We were never especially close. He's one of those tall, soft-spoken guys who could make you feel stupid without raising his voice. He used to come over during the holidays and fix things around the house. Never said much. Always wore those thick flannel shirts and steel-toe boots like he was still living in northern Idaho. Even though he'd been in Tempe for years. His message was short. You around tonight? I'd like to talk. My treat. For a few minutes, I just stared at it. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what he knew, or if he was just checking in. I responded with 2 words. Sure. Where? We met at a low-key place off Baseline. One of those bars with more wood than lighting, where the booths creak when you lean in and the music is low enough that you can actually hear the words people regret saying. He was already there when I arrived, sitting in the corner booth. Water in front of him. No food. No beer. Just a black notebook on the table, unopened, like he brought it out of habit. He stood when I walked up. That same firm handshake. That unreadable face. Chris, he said. Tom. We sat. There was a long pause. I half expected him to open with small talk, weather, work, sports. But he didn't. He just looked at me for a long time, then leaned forward. She told me everything, he said, voice even. I didn't answer, just nodded once. She didn't expect to, he continued. I think she started venting and didn't realize she was confessing. I leaned back against the booth. He folded his hands, stared at the grain of the table. She told me about the guy, Darren. Told me she'd been seeing him for a few months, maybe longer. His voice was calm, but underneath it was tension. Not surprise, just disappointment, like he'd already gone through his phase of disbelief and landed on clarity. She told me she was planning to leave, he added. That hit harder than I thought it would. She said she was just waiting for the right moment. Said she didn't want to hurt you. I couldn't help it. I laughed. Just once. Dry. Bitter. Like a cough that came with regret. She didn't want to hurt me, I repeated. So she brought another man into our house? Tom nodded slowly. I know. She told you that? She did. Another pause. He looked out the window for a moment before turning back to me. She said something else, he said, voice lower now. She said she was hoping you'd be the one to end it. That if you pulled the plug, she wouldn't have to be the villain. I blinked. She wanted me to believe she was doing the noble thing. That she stayed for your sake. That she didn't want to disrupt your life. He leaned forward again. But you beat her to it. And I think that scared her. I didn't respond. My stomach was tight. I wanted to get up, to leave, to say I already knew all of this. But I didn't. Because hearing it from someone else, someone she trusted, hit different. Tom pulled the notebook toward him, tapped the cover with one thick finger. I told her she was being reckless. That it wasn't just about marriage or love. It was about character. He looked at me. She doesn't get it, Chris. Not really. She thinks this is about passion. About feeling stuck. About her own happiness. He paused. But she never stopped to think about who she was breaking in the process. I swallowed hard. She told me she never thought you'd go quiet, he added. She expected anger. A scene. A fight she could point to later and say, see? That's why I left. I let that sit there for a while. It made sense. It explained why she kept waiting. Why she hadn't picked up the boxes. Why she never even tried to explain herself. She wasn't confused. She was playing for position. She said she thought you'd chase her, Tom added. That maybe part of her wanted to be caught. He shook his head slowly. I told her that was selfish, he said, almost to himself. That you don't dangle people just to see if they'll reach. Cleared my throat. My voice was low when I finally spoke. Why are you telling me this, Tom? He didn't flinch. Because I'm not on her side, he said. Not in this. And because I think you need to hear it from someone who isn't trying to manipulate you. He reached into the notebook and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Slid it across the table. She wrote this 2 nights ago. Said she wasn't sure if she'd give it to you. Asked what I thought. I stared at the paper. I told her not to, he said. Because it wasn't an apology. It was a justification. I didn't touch the letter. I think she thought if she could explain why it happened, you'd soften. That maybe you'd remember the good times and think it was all just a rough patch. He leaned back. But I told her she's not the one who gets to decide what this meant. You are. I finally picked up the letter. Didn't open it. Just held it. Tom stood. I'm not here to tell you what to do, he said. I just thought you deserved to know that someone saw it. Really saw it. I stood too. Thanks, I said quietly. He nodded. You're a good man, Chris. I hope you remember that. And with that, he walked out, flannel shirt swaying at his sides, boots thudding gently against the floorboards. I sat back down, stared at the letter, and then, after a moment, I left it on the table and walked out. Didn't look back. Didn't need to. When I got home, the boxes were still there. But something in me had shifted. Not rage. Not peace. Just certainty. I didn't need her reasons, because she'd already shown me her priorities. And I didn't need her words, because her silence had said enough. She came back a week later. No call. No warning. Just used the spare key I forgot existed. I was in the kitchen when the door opened. She walked in like she still lived there, glancing around like she was checking for changes. She didn't apologize, didn't ask how I was, just said, "I think we should talk." Her tone was calm, rehearsed. She looked for cracks in me, anything to exploit, but I gave her nothing. Her eyes scanned the room, then me. "You look different," she said. "Lighter." I didn't answer. I didn't owe her my weight. She stayed 10 minutes trying out different tones, curious, casual, even kind, but never remorseful. She wasn't here to fix anything. She was testing the lock to see if she still had access. When she left, the door clicked behind her too softly, and I knew this wasn't a wife coming home. It was a trespasser checking if the alarm was still off. The note came 2 days later. No envelope, just a paper slid under the door. "You think you've locked everything, but I know which doors you still leave open. I'm still part of you." No name, no explanation. I read it once, folded it cleanly, and placed it with the others. I didn't feel fear. I felt bored. Her words no longer cut, they echoed. So I left. Drove 2 hours north to a lakeside cafe I'd been to once. She wasn't there, but Sky was. Same corner table, same book in her lap. I asked if I could sit. She looked up, smiled gently, and nodded. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't fate. But it was real. I bought us 2 coffees. Her silence was kind, steady, like she'd learned the value of quiet the same way I had, by surviving noise. I didn't tell her anything. I just listened. That's how healing begins, not with answers but with space. That night, I tossed the ring in the river. No anger, no speech, just stillness. And for once it felt like peace.